Hello, how's everybody today? Good. So as Ken said, we're going to be cooking with some fall fruits today. We're going to start off with some fresh local pears and a couple different types of apples today. First dish we're going to make is panna cotta with the fall fruit compote on top of that. So I am actually going to start with the compote, with the panna cotta. First thing I'm going to do is take a little bit of brandy here. And what I have is just a little bit of unflavored gelatin. Whenever you're working with gelatin and it's going to go into another liquid, you always want to, what they call bloom it. So I'm just going to sprinkle this on top of the brandy. And you'll see it's floating on top right now, but in 3 or 4 minutes, the gelatin will soak up all that liquid. It'll keep it from getting lumpy when you add it back into the hot liquid. So let me start the pot here. So what I'm going to do now is just take my brown sugar, start with that in the pan. Add my milk to that. I have 1 vanilla bean that I'm going to split and then just scrape the center out of that. And that whole vanilla bean goes in. And then I have just a tiny bit of cinnamon. This is ground cinnamon. You can use whole sticks if you like. It'll be a little bit more even. If you're using a whole stick, just take the oil out of that. And then I'm actually going to add 1 piece of star anise to that as well. And then just whisk this together. So while that's starting to warm up, I'm going to get my next pan warm. We're going to start working on the compote over here. So for this, I'm going to start off with one of our local pears.
What kind of pear is that?
This is a Bosc. So you want to make sure that you're using a firm fruit, like a firm pear, a firm apple. A Granny Smith apple works very well. If you're using like a red apple or Gallo apple, when you cook them, they tend to be a little bit more mealy. So you can add them in there if you like. What it will give you is, it'll almost be more of like an applesauce with chunks of the pear in it, rather than all being chunks. Turn this down. So your milk here, you want to make sure that you're warming it very gently. That way it doesn't scorch the bottom of the pan on you. So here, I'm just going to take and dice up our pear and a little bit of our apple. Okay, so here I'm going to start with our apples in the pan. Just sprinkle a tiny bit of our sugar on top of that. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of white wine, just to start helping that cook down. And into that I've got 1 piece of star anise, a little bit of pink peppercorns. They're a little bit more mild than black peppercorns, so if you leave them in and you get a whole bite of one in your mouth, it won't be entirely too pungent. So while that's simmering, I'll let that go. I just take a small piece of our fresh ginger here. Now this, you can dice it up very finely if you like, or if you just want to get the flavor out of it and pull it out later, you can just simply crush it and leave it in a large piece, and then you can pull it out very easily after it's done cooking. So we're going to add that to there. So now if you can see that, there should be a good amount of liquid in the pan, and we're going to cook that until it pretty much cooks all the way out and kind of starts to brown a little bit. And I'm going to add a little bit of honey to that as well. Okay, so now I'm going to come back to our compote. As you can see, I don't know if you can see. Can you guys see that? Ish. So it's definitely hot. You don't want to bring it to a boil because then you run the risk of breaking that. And if you can see this, the gelatin is kind of coagulated on the top. So what we can do is just stir that up a little bit and then very slowly mix the two together. Now, if you don't want to use the alcohol in that, what you can do is just reserve a little bit of the milk or cream on the side and bloom the gelatin in that cold. So then once that gets stirred in and it's hot, again, at this point you definitely don't want to boil it because it'll start to break. You can see now, it's a little bit thicker than it was. But then what I have here, these are just silicone molds. You can use a muffin tin, anything. What I'll say is if you're using silicone, they'll pop right out. If you're using a muffin tin, you're going to have to warm them up a little bit, maybe dip the bottom of the pan in a little bit of water for 10 or 15 seconds. And I'm just going to fill these up. Okay. And then this goes in the fridge it'll take at least a good 4 hours to set up completely on the inside. It's best if you do it the day before. It'll be a lot safer when you start getting it out. So, then our compote here, what I want to do is just add a little bit of lemon juice to that, just to brighten it up a little bit. Okay. And we're just going to leave this cooking on the side for a few minutes. As you can see, a lot of the liquid's gone, so I'm going to turn it down so that it just starts to caramelize on itself a little bit. All right. So the next dish we are going to do is a red wine poached pear. So with this, you can leave the top on, the stem. It tends to be a good way to present it. But try to peel as close to it as you can. And then what you can do is if you take the bottom of the pear and cut it, just cut maybe a 1/4 inch or so off of it so that it will lay flat. Then remove the core. So there's a couple different things. You can either use a melon baller with this or an apple core, but with the core in a pear, it doesn't go all the way through. It really the seeds only go to where the neck starts. So a melon baller will probably work the best without going all the way up through it. So you can see it just takes a couple scoops. We're only about that deep, and all the seeds are out. And you definitely want to do that before you cook the pears. That way, in the thick part, the steeping liquid is on the inside as well. So we're going to start with that. I'm going to have just a little bit of water in the pan. Okay. Now, I'm going to use red wine in this just because it turns the pear a nice bright ruby color once it cooks. You can use really any type of sweet wine you like. If it's not a really sweet wine, I would just add a little bit more sugar to it to taste, or honey. So this, I'm going to add a little bit of honey to that. Just a small piece of a cinnamon stick. And a little bit more of our ginger. This you can leave that in large pieces because that's all going to get strained out as well at the end. And sorry, one more vanilla bean to that as well. And then a little bit more brown sugar. So that. Then what we're going to do is simply make sure that's as covered as you can get it. If it's not really covered, you're going to want to let it steep for maybe 5 minutes and keep spinning it. So here's our apples are starting to get a little caramelized. So now at this point, what I'm going to do is add about a tablespoon of raisins to that and a little bit of dried cranberries. And I actually have some dried apricots here to add to it as well. Now, really any dried fruit that you like to add is fine. So they can go in. I'm actually going to hit this with a little bit more wine to help take all the caramelization off the pan. As you can see now, like I hit it with that, and all the brown that was stuck to the pan is now coming off. I'm going to turn that back up a little bit to let that cook off. And as soon as that comes down, that will be done. You just want that to be almost like a syrupy sauce consistency to that. Okay.
So what do you call that when you use the liquid to get all that?
Deglazing. There you go.
You see it in the recipe.
All right. Let this go down. So these are not going to set on me here.
I also heard from another chef that when you want to poach in red wine, it helps to begin the process by maybe beginning to settle some of that in your stomach. That's how I use it.
So right about now, like you can see the dried fruit has soaked up a lot of that liquid, and it's kind of a more syrupy consistency. You don't want all the liquid to disappear because once that, it has all the pectin from the fruit, or from the apple and the pear and the dried fruits. Once this cools, it's gonna thicken up a lot. So that right there is about the consistency. You just want probably a couple spoonfuls of sauce left in the pan. You can see there, I'm not sure. So, all right. So that's the end of that. The panna cotta will be ready in, like I said, 4 or 5 hours as soon as that comes out of the fridge. And our pear will take probably about 20 minutes to poach. So, all right. How was the panna cotta? Anybody try it? Is it good? Okay. That's a nice dish for, really you can make it as sweet or as not as you like. Takes on flavors very well. You could throw whole coffee beans in there if you wanted it to be coffee flavored. Really any type of extract. If you go to a nice spice store, there'd be 100 different extract flavors. Just a couple drops in it, you'll get a lot of that flavor back out of it. In fall, like if you just want to add like a tiny bit of pumpkin puree to that, it would almost have like a creamy pumpkin latte flavor to it with the vanilla and everything in it. So takes on flavors very well. That's just a basic recipe for it. Yes?
So when you were sweetening the pear, you said there was a choice between sugar and honey, but you chose honey. Is there a reason behind that? Is it preference?
Not for this. The honey for me brings out a lot more like the flavors in the pear. Kind of goes a little bit better with it for me. It's not just, it has a lot more flavor to it in that. It's not just sweet.
So there's not like a cooking advantage, like
No, not really.
okay.
So.
And then what do you mean by breaking the gelatin? I'm sorry, that
What's that?
Breaking. You kept on mentioning breaking.
Oh, so if you boil it, once you add the gelatin, what it'll do is it'll actually separate from the milk, and it'll never really set up. So you'll end up with like a small portion of it that's gelatinized, and then a lot of liquid on the bottom. So it'll separate itself and float on top instead of incorporating.
Thank you.
No problem. Yes.
For the panna cotta, can you make that with alternative milk?
Yes, absolutely. That is one thing that you definitely can, especially where you're not boiling it, because I know, like a lot of nut milks, if you boil them, they get a burnt flavor to them really quickly. They kind of get like charred flavor even when they don't burn to the pan. They just kind of inherently take on a bitter flavor. But you really only need to get it up to about 180 degrees to make it gelatinized. So you're fine with really any type of milk you like. Yes, sir.
And if you were to substitute the gelatin for agar, would that be okay?
Agar I don't think would work very well for this. There's different types of tapioca starch, things along those lines that would work better. So agar would kind of, it will never really set fully. So, but yeah, there are different alternatives that you can use. They'll be a little bit difficult to find. They're more on like the molecular gastronomy type of things. So, but yeah, they're like a modified tapioca starch, which has a few different names to it depending on who's selling it. But that would be a good vegan option if that's what you're looking for. Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you.